Grant Walker quietly adjusted the sleeve of his worn jacket as he waited in the executive lobby. To everyone passing by, he was simply another company driver, a polite, soft-spoken single father who never complained, never interrupted conversations, and always kept his eyes lowered. Most executives barely noticed him unless they needed a ride. Some even forgot his name entirely. Grant preferred it that way. Ever since losing his wife, his only priority had been raising his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie. Every extra shift he accepted meant another dance class, another school trip, or another bedtime story he refused to miss. That afternoon, Sophie sat in a nearby waiting area, happily sketching superheroes in a small notebook while Grant finished his assignment. She occasionally looked up with a bright smile that instantly softened the hardened expression on her father's face. No expensive suit or executive title could ever mean more to him than that smile. Inside the building, CEO Victoria Bennett had just concluded one of the most important meetings of her career. Investors had applauded her decisions, executives praised her leadership, and reporters waited outside hoping for interviews. She appeared calm on the surface, but privately she carried enormous pressure. Her company had recently rejected a dangerous criminal organization attempting to force its way into one of the corporation's largest security contracts. Anonymous threats had followed for weeks, but Victoria refused to give in. As she exited the boardroom, one of her security supervisors rushed toward her. His face had gone pale. "We've lost contact with the Security Operations Center." Victoria frowned. "What do you mean lost contact?" "No cameras, no radio response." Before he could continue, every light inside the hallway flickered. Emergency alarms briefly activated before suddenly going silent. The supervisor reached for his radio again. Nothing. His expression changed from concern to fear. "They're inside." Seconds later, terrified employees poured from another hallway. Some were crying, others stumbled over each other trying to escape. "They have guns." "They're taking everyone." Victoria froze. The supervisor instinctively stepped in front of her. "Run!" A loud burst of automatic gunfire echoed through the building. Glass shattered somewhere nearby. People screamed. The supervisor shoved Victoria toward the main lobby before disappearing back toward the sound, trying to buy everyone else time. Victoria ran. By the time she reached the lobby, her breathing had become uneven. Her eyes searched desperately through the frightened crowd. Then she saw Grant helping Sophie zip up her backpack. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't panicking. He was quietly observing every entrance, every reflection in the glass walls, every emergency exit. Victoria rushed toward him. "Grant." He turned immediately. She grabbed his arm. "They took the hostages." Grant's calm expression never changed. "How many?" I don't know." "Where?" "The security floor." Then they started moving upward. Grant slowly looked toward the elevators. "They disabled communications first." Victoria blinked. "How did you know that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he knelt beside Sophie. "Princess," she looked up. "You remember our safety promise?" She nodded seriously. "If Daddy tells you to hide, you stay hidden until police officers come." "What about you?" He smiled gently. "I'll come find you." She hugged him tightly before moving behind the reception counter with 2 terrified employees. Grant stood again. Victoria watched him carefully. The quiet driver she thought she knew suddenly looked completely different. Not angry, not frightened. Focused. Every movement became deliberate. Every sound seemed to matter. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. 4 masked gunmen stepped into the lobby carrying military-style rifles. "Everyone on the floor!" Employees screamed and dropped instantly. One executive tried running. A burst of gunfire shattered the marble inches from his feet, forcing him face down. Another attacker pointed directly at Victoria. "There she is!" Grant reacted before anyone else moved. He pulled Victoria behind a massive concrete pillar just as bullets tore through the air where she had been standing moments earlier. Dust exploded from the walls. Glass rained across the floor. Victoria stared at him in shock. "You just saved my life." Grant calmly peeked around the pillar, studying the attackers instead of answering. His eyes counted each weapon, each position, each line of fire. Then he quietly whispered, "Stay behind me." Whatever happens, don't run until I tell you. Victoria could barely speak.
Who are you?
Grant kept watching the armed men as one corner of his jaw tightened. I'm just a father, he paused briefly, who refuses to let innocent people die. The attackers spread through the lobby, believing they had complete control. None of them realized that the quiet single dad they had ignored was already planning exactly how to stop every one of them. Grant moved before the gunmen could tighten their circle. He grabbed a metal fire extinguisher from the wall and hurled it across the lobby. The heavy cylinder crashed into a glass display, exploding into smoke and shattered glass. The sudden distraction pulled every attacker's attention away from Victoria. In the same instant, Grant surged forward with astonishing speed. The nearest gunman barely managed to raise his rifle before Grant trapped the weapon against the attacker's chest, twisted it aside, and drove him backward into a marble column. The rifle clattered across the floor, far out of reach. Before the second attacker could fire, Grant used the first man's body as cover while shouting, "Everybody stay down!" The terrorists fired wildly, their bullets striking pillars and furniture instead of innocent employees. Grant never wasted movement. Every step had purpose. Every action protected the people trapped inside the lobby. He forced another attacker behind cover, knocking the weapon from his hands before sending him crashing unconscious against the floor. The remaining gunmen tried surrounding him from opposite directions, believing numbers would finally overwhelm him. Instead, Grant guided them into each other's line of fire. Confused and panicked, they hesitated just long enough for building security officers, who had quietly regrouped, to rush in through a service entrance. Within seconds, the attackers realized their plan had collapsed. One attempted to seize Victoria as a hostage. Grant crossed the distance almost instantly, pulling her safely behind him before disarming the attacker with a precise movement that left the rifle sliding harmlessly across the polished floor. Security officers immediately restrained the final gunman, while police tactical units stormed the building and secured every remaining floor, freeing the hostages without further loss of innocent life. Silence slowly replaced the chaos. Employees who had hidden beneath desks and tables stood in disbelief. Some applauded. Others simply stared at the quiet father they had overlooked every single day. Victoria looked at Grant with tears in her eyes. I judged you the moment I saw your uniform, she admitted softly. Today you saved my life, and everyone else's. Grant glanced toward Sophie, who ran into his arms the moment officers declared the building safe. He smiled. I wasn't trying to be a hero. He kissed his daughter's forehead. I was just making sure every parent here got the chance to go home to their family. Weeks later, Victoria publicly honored Grant for his extraordinary courage. She also offered him an executive security position with a salary that would transform his daughter's future. Grant accepted on one condition. I want to be home every evening before my little girl goes to bed. Victoria smiled. After what you've taught all of us, I'd never ask you to choose between your job and your family. The entire room stood and applauded, not because Grant had defeated armed criminals, but because the quiet single dad everyone underestimated proved that the strongest people are often those whose greatest mission is simply getting home to the ones they love.